That's a few months that went by without the patient following the recommendation you gave them. With real-time prescription benefits, you are able to now have this conversation face-to-face while the patient is still in your office. Prior to using this workflow, though, you do have to check the patient's eligibility. Eligibility requests uses Pharmacy Benefit Manager data, which is known as the PBM, to determine patient coverage and copay details for prescription. It is required to check the patient's eligibility before formulary data will appear. You can manually check the patient's eligibility in the medication module, or best practice for streamlining prescribing workflow is to have the eligibility run automatically when an encounter is created and when the medication module is open. In the top right portion of my medication module, I can see that my patient is eligible. And then if I hover over, it gives me the date and time that the eligibility was ran. Once I've confirmed the patient's eligibility, then I can start the workflow of prescribing a medication. This is a typical prescribing workflow. I'll start by selecting Prescribe New. Then I'll search for the medication that I want to prescribe for my patient. I'll select the dosage, and it brings it forward into my prescription pad in the medication module. Then you're required to enter the quantity, the refills, and the duration, as well as have the patient's pharmacy listed. Once you input all of that information, then it will automatically bring up the cost for the patient. At this point, I can have that real-time conversation with my patient, discuss the costs. If the patient raises concern that this isn't an affordable option, then I'm able to then click on Show Alternative Pricing and Coverage. It then will give me some alternative options to the medication I originally prescribed, as well as the cost for those different medications. If I want to give the patient a different prescription that's more affordable for them, then I can select it and select Replace, and it automatically will bring that prescription into my prescription pad in the medication module. I again have to enter the quantity, the refills, and the duration. But when I click off, it brings up that new estimated cost for this replacement medication. Then I continue my workflow normal. I'll select Accept, and then I am able to send the prescription to the patient's pharmacy. With this workflow, I'm able to have that transparent conversation with the patient during their visit, which will ultimately increase the patient's adherence to my recommendations. It does save time for me, though, and my staff, because I'm able to minimize the calls that I receive from the pharmacy and the patient discussing what some alternative options would be. Now, for some of these medications, a prior authorization is necessary. The manual workflow to complete a prior authorization, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, turns into a complicated and time-consuming mess sometimes. It starts by the prescriber sending a prescription to the pharmacy. The pharmacist then, either before the patient arrives or after the patient arrives, determines that a prior authorization is necessary. So the pharmacist then contacts the prescriber and lets them know that a prior authorization is necessary. At this point, the prescriber or someone in their office contacts the payer for the patient, and a prior authorization questionnaire is then sent to the office. They have to fill out that information, fax it back, and then occasionally there's back and forth faxing that ultimately delays the amount of time until the patient can actually pick up their prescription and start it. Once the prior authorization is finally approved, then the prescription gets resent to the pharmacy and the patient can finally pick it up. Ultimately, this is a couple days to a couple weeks process, and it usually gets pretty messy and time-consuming for staff. With electronic prior authorization, though, this process is now clean and easy workflow within the provider's EHR. To start this workflow, you will prescribe a medication as normal. You'll again select the dosage that you want to prescribe, and it brings it into your prescription pad in the bottom of your medication module. You'll then enter the quantity, the refills, and the duration like normal. And when you click off, then it shows the estimated patient costs. Now, to view if a prior authorization is necessary, then you'll select Show Alternative Pricing and Coverage again, And this time it pops up with an alert, letting me know in the bottom right corner, yes, prior authorization for this medication is necessary. One thing I want to point out though is that you can see there are alternative medications that do not require prior authorization. So you can substitute that if your patient is okay with not getting the brand name. If they want the original prescription, then you'll have to proceed with the prior authorization workflow. So to do this, now that I've input all this information and I know I'm going to be doing a prior authorization, I'm going to hover over the left side where I can see patient's condition with all of their diagnosis codes. I need to get a diagnosis code as to why this prescription is being prescribed and drag it into the problems list. This will attach to the prior authorization. Then I will select accept, and it is brought into the top of my grid. And at this point, the Initiate EPA button is now highlighted in blue. I can select that, and this will start the process for me. As you can see in the top part of the grid, it's now listed as in progress. If I want to manage that prior authorization, I can do it straight from the medication module by selecting Manage EPA. It brings up all of the tasks for the prior authorization that need to be completed. And then it also brings up the task history of things that I've completed in the past for prior authorizations. This is our SureScripts patient, so this list is much longer than a normal patient would be. Another way you can view the task required for prior authorization is actually through your inbox. If you go to inbox, I have mine organized for pharmacy communications, and it gives me some of the different information like prior authorization is required. It also will give me some information if a prior authorization has been approved that I can view as well. But for medications that are requiring an action, if I select it, it brings it into this bottom view for me. From here, I can select Manage EPA, and it automatically will launch me into the window where I can manage those tasks. Here I can see that I need to complete something for the prior authorization. So if I select it, then it will automatically pull forward the patient's information, the medication, the payer, and the provider. Now I can start the questionnaire that's been sent to me. I fill out these questions. This is specific for the medication. It's based on your patient and some of their past history. Once I've completed all of these questions, I'm brought to a summary screen where I can see the questions that were asked as well as my answer to them given in blue. I have the ability, as you can see on the bottom, to add an attachment if necessary and also add additional comments for the prior authorization. Once I'm okay with all of this information though, I will hit submit and it will go to the patient's PBM through SureScripts. Now I wait until that prescription gets approved. Once it's approved, I can manage it through the medication module for that patient, or I can just check my inbox and I'll be sent a note that says EPA approved. At this point, I know that that prior authorization has been approved, and I can go ahead and send the prescription in for my patient. I'm again able to do this right from this window by just selecting Send RX, and then all I have to do is submit the prescription to the patient's pharmacy. Now, this workflow can be managed by providers, or it can be managed by assigned work group delegates. It does help when you are wanting to see all of your prior authorizations for all of your patients. You can go to the view window in the top of your screen, select Manage EPA, and it will bring forward all of my prior authorizations for all of my patients. I can see Calvin Campbell, which is again our SureScripts patients in the demo environment, but I also can see other patients that have a prior authorization information. Again, I can see the task history, which is all of my patients' previous tasks that I've completed for prior authorizations. This workflow just helps streamline the entire process and manage extra time that's spent on handling phone calls from the pharmacy or faxing back and forth questionnaires to the patient's payer. Now, one last thing I want to show you is that through your Success community, you have the ability to, if you type in the abbreviations for real-time prescription benefits, sorry, I mistyped that. You have at the top, you can see which PBMs are active with real-time prescription benefits. It includes an entire list if you have one that your practice uses most frequently. You're also, if you're able to go back, you have a little bit of education material that you can use just as you're using this workflow. So this was a quick overview of electronic prior authorizations, as well as real-time prescription benefits and medication history. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and add them to the chat and we will talk through them. Wendy, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Caroline. We had one question come in. I'll just repeat it. Does this require the formulary to be loaded to be accurately correct? So real-time prescription benefits does require the pharmacy benefit manager coverage, that list that Caroline showed you from the success community. And then yes, you would need to make sure your formularies are correct. So I don't know if anybody on the panelists wants to add to that answer that I've just provided, but and let me look in the chat. How do you know the real-time prescription benefit is available to our practice? Coots, can you help with that? I mean, Wendy Coots is on here as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you by your last name. It should be available to your practice if you're signed up with the SureScripts network. Is there something additional, Donna or Kira, that they have to have loaded?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, how do you know the real-time prescription benefit is available to our practice?
So it's available in NextGen, so everybody has access to it. And then I think that the next answer would be this list that we have up. Those are the active PBMs that are participating with SureScripts for both real-time prescribing benefit and electronic prior authorization. So the functionality is within NextGen, everybody has it. And then here's the active list for those PBMs that are participating with SureScripts to provide this service.
All right, thank you, Wendy. How would a chart note get attached to the EPA? Can we attach a chart note to the EPA?
There is ability when you go through and you're answering that questionnaire, that action required that Caroline demonstrated, where you have the questions that are being asked. At the end, there's a section to add additional commentary, and there's ability to attach a document.
All right, thank you, Wendy. What modules need to be updated routinely for this? Medication, obviously, but are there others? It's a part of the NextGen core, so as long as you stay up to date with NextGen releases, and this is not anything that's new in the release. I mean, we're in spring 21, but it works backwards with the releases, so they're really, as long as you stay current on NextGen, the supported version, I don't think there's anything that you have to update routinely except maybe your formulary. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add to that question. Can the pharmacy be changed to see alternate prices at other pharmacies? Would the pharmacy need to be the one of the pharmacies associated with the client, or will it show alternatives for any pharmacy in the system?
Hold on.
Donna,
Yeah, I'm waiting for an answer from Donna. Donna and Kira don't have audio, so they're.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can unmute them.
They're sending me the answers.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can help out there.
That's why we have a pause of silence.
So, okay. Let's see, folks, if we can get this better.
So it's based on the pharmacy selection. The pharmacy that's selected first for the patient, that's where the pricing is coming from. And then if you want to look at pricing at another pharmacy, then you'd have to change the pharmacy.
So I think the answer to that is, it's, as Wendy said, it looks at the pharmacy you've selected, but if you want another pharmacy, you would have to select another pharmacy. It's not going to automatically show you alternatives from a different pharmacy unless you select it. I don't I don't see any other questions. I'll pause a moment and give time to add any more questions. I did put the link to Success Community in the top of the chat section. So if you want to copy that before we get off, that's just a link to Success Community to the page. As I said, recordings are not there yet, but we will get the recordings out there. Last week's recording should be there sometime today, we hope. If not soon, if not, it will be there as soon as possible, and then we'll get the recording out for this one and all the subsequent ones. That page is also a link where you can register to other ones. We have financial sessions. We have some on NextGen Share, background business processor, screening tools, NextPen, automatic document sharing, just to mention a few. And certainly we will continue these as the interest, continues to stay here. We would love to be able to do this. So hoping that this has been helpful to you, relevant to your needs. If you have any questions about anything you've seen and you might, need some follow-up, please reach out to your account team, your account manager, your account executive. The demo team would be happy to, do a demo and talk further if you have other questions. I don't see any more questions. Let me check in the Q&A and see. Okay, there is another one here. At the beginning of the presentation, there was an import option to import medications into the EHR. Are those medications stored before they are imported into the EHR, and where does that come from?
So they're
can you go back to that screen?
Yeah, they're coming in through the medication history. So when they come in, it's just showing you these medications were filled at SureScripts participating pharmacies, and it'll have an indicator to let you know if that's a medication that's in your med list already. So it'll have that plus sign if it's not a medication that's already in the medication list, but it's just letting you, it's pulling it in through SureScripts through medication history, meds that have been filled and purchased from SureScripts participating pharmacy that have been either paid for by claims or paid for by cash. And it's just coming in through that continuity of care document, if you will, and it lets you see on the left-hand side what's in the EHR, on the right-hand side what's pulling in. It's not stored anywhere, but you do have the ability to consume it into the EHR from that screen.
All right. One more question. Is there something that needs to be turned on in practice? Preferences, file maintenance, system admin for RT, real-time prescribing benefits for our EPA to work?
There is some setup. I don't have it. I don't have it to call out right here on the fly, but I can direct you to the e-prescribing guide that's out on Success Community that will walk you through what the configuration is.
Thank you, Wendy. And if you need to, you could open a support ticket and they could certainly direct you in that manner as well.
So I was just corrected that there's no configuration needed.
There's no configuration needed. Okay.
Thanks,
again,
Sarah.
This is a part of the NextGen core. So again, one of the reasons why we wanted to do these sessions, again, was to help you maybe understand functionality that you may not be using at your facility. And we certainly want you to optimize your use of the NextGen system. One other question, I think we've answered it, but I'll repeat it just to make sure for Lisa. If you have two pharmacies, does it consider both? I believe, Lisa, that you would have to choose which one you want it to look at and then change and have it look at the other one. It's not going to look at both of them at the same time. Let me go back and look in one more place and make sure we've got all our questions answered.
And let me add some more color commentary to the no setup needed.
Okay.
You do have to, there are required fields. Well, first of all, you have to make sure that, there are required, you have to make sure that you have your updated formularies with your PBMs. You have to make sure that it's a PBM that's participating with the real-time prescribing benefit and EPA, that list that we showed you earlier, that's right there on Success Community. And then there are required fields. Caroline walked through those required fields, quantity and duration that have to be in pharmacy that have to be completed for that real-time prescribing benefit to return. But behind the scenes configuration, it's that your formularies are up to date. But I would still reference you to that e-prescribing guide that's on Success Community. It has a section for real-time prescribing benefit.
We had one more question. Can you post how to set the RX eligibility to run automatically?
It's actually there's two settings it's in system admin. Is it universal preferences, Kira? And again, Kira's having to type her responses. It's two universal preferences in system admin that you have to set for it to run eligibility at the time that the encounter is created, as well as run eligibility at the time that the medication module is open. And it's in that user guide that I've pointed you to on Success Community. So if you go to Success Community today and in the search bar, you put RTPB for real-time prescription benefit, it's going to, at the top of that list, pull up your list of currently participating PBMs. It's going to pull up that little two-page workflow benefits that Caroline showed related to real-time prescribing benefit. And I think one or two links underneath that is going to be the user guide that has your section on the eligibility, setting that up to run automatically, the real-time prescribing benefit workflow in the EPA.
I can put the link here on, I just found the link. Let me put that in the chat, what Wendy was referencing. So I'll give everyone time to copy this down if you'd like to. So this is the Success Community link. I just sent it in the chat to everyone to that real-time prescribing benefit page on Success Community. So I'll give everyone just a moment to copy that, as well as the one up above for the link to these recordings. One more question, Wendy. Is there an automation to running eligibility by appointment list as you run from the inbox and EHR? Is there any automation to running eligibility by appointment list as you run from the inbox and EHR?
I think if I understand that correctly, in the inbox, you do have the ability to run eligibility for all of the patients on your schedule for the day. We still think it's best practice to have it run automatically when you open the medication module or when you, run the eligibility for the whole day rather than manually having to go to your inbox. I can share my screen.
Yeah.
Show that.
Yeah.
In the inbox under appointments, if you select the widget, then you can select batch RX eligibility. I don't have any patients on my schedule for today since it's a demo environment, but this would run eligibility for the entire batch of patients on my schedule.
Thank you, Caroline. Great answer. All right. We're 3 minutes over. Great call today. Great information. Thank you, Wendy Coots and Caroline Rogers for your input. We also had Donna Biddick and Kara Campbell from Solutions shooting us over answers as well. So I appreciate their participation. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Again, this will be posted on Success Community, and we will have another session next week. We hope to see and hear from you again, and we'll call this quits for today, and everyone have a nice day, and wherever you are, stay warm. I think it's cold everywhere. So we will end this session, and thank you very much.